When it comes to money, sometimes things can get a little bit overwhelming. It sounds like you've been struggling with some pretty tough financial questions lately, especially when it comes to the idea of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And you've actually shared some really interesting info with us about all of that. So let's dive in and see if we can kind of break down some of this stuff together and really figure out if it's something that makes sense for you to even, consider.
Okay.
Luckily, we have an expert here who can help us navigate these waters.
Yeah, great to be here.
So you sent over a chapter from a book called The Complete Book on Bankruptcy, and it's by attorney Peter Francis, Geraci of Geraci Law.
Right.
And he outlines these seven common causes of bankruptcy. And I was reading through them, and I was thinking, wow, a lot of these situations are more common than people think.
Yeah. Absolutely. Geraci really hits the nail on the head with those 7 causes. Things like over-reliance on credit, wages not keeping up with the rising cost of living, medical bills piling up, job loss, even excessive gambling or helping family members financially. All of that can put immense strain on your personal finances.
And what's really interesting is how a lot of these causes are actually tied to these larger societal issues.
Right.
It's not always like somebody's being personally irresponsible.
Yeah.
It's often just things that are happening like wages being stagnant or unexpected medical expenses popping up, things that really could happen to anyone.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Bankruptcy often arises from factors beyond an individual's control, and it's about, acknowledging when those pressures become too much to handle and seeking a solution for them.
There's this one piece of advice from Geraci that I found really interesting, and I bet a lot of people wouldn't expect this. He suggests considering bankruptcy before you dip into your retirement funds.
Right.
It seems kind of counterintuitive.
It might seem that way at first, but there's a really strategic reason behind that. Think of it this way. Bankruptcy laws are designed to protect certain assets. And retirement savings, things like your 401k or pension, those are usually shielded from creditors.
Yeah.
They're kind of like a fortress. But if you cash them out to pay off debt, you're essentially lowering that drawbridge and exposing those funds.
So you're putting yourself in a worse position by trying to solve the problem.
Exactly. Geraci makes a really strong case for protecting those retirement funds. It's about preserving your long-term financial well-being and making really informed choices that set you up for, a more secure future.
He also points out that losing a high-paying job can be a trigger for considering bankruptcy. And he mentions this term, Chapter 7's income test.
Right.
Can you sort of break that down for us? What does that mean?
Yeah, of course. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is sometimes referred to as liquidation bankruptcy, and it offers the possibility of discharging most of your unsecured debts. But you have to meet certain income requirements to be eligible for it.
I see.
So if your income falls below the median income for your state and your household size, you're more likely to qualify.
So if you recently lost a high-paying job and your income has taken a hit, you could be eligible for Chapter 7.
Exactly.
But then if you find a new job that pushes you above that limit, you might not be able to qualify anymore.
Exactly.
So timing is kind of key there.
Timing is crucial, yeah. That's why acting quickly after a job loss, if you're considering Chapter 7, could be very important. If your income later increases, Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which involves more of a structured repayment plan, might be a better fit for you.
Okay. You also sent over this checklist from Geraci Law.
Yes!
And it really highlights all the things to consider when you're trying to figure out if this is the right path.
Uh-huh.
Just looking at this, it really does show how complex all these decisions can be.
It's true. There's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to bankruptcy. Geraci Law, takes a very comprehensive approach to help people evaluate their situations and figure out what is right for them.
I think some of these items on this checklist might resonate with people listening. Things like having a high debt-to-income ratio or using credit cards just for basic necessities like groceries or gas, or even struggling to make those minimum payments on your debts.
Yeah, those are definitely red flags. I think those suggest that seeking professional guidance could be really beneficial for you.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy is a significant decision, and Geraci Law really stresses the importance of making informed choices. That's why they offer those free consultations to help people understand all their options.
Yeah, and they also have a free debtor education course available online at infotapes.com. And that's an amazing resource, even if you decide bankruptcy is not right for you.
It really is. The goal is to give people the knowledge they need to manage their finances effectively, no matter what path they choose. Understanding things like budgeting, credit, and debt can be incredibly empowering for anyone.
Before we go any further, though, we do want to remind you that we're not providing any legal advice. This is for informational purposes only. And if you're considering bankruptcy, you should definitely consult with a qualified attorney to discuss your own situation.
I completely agree. Every situation is different, and a legal professional can give you guidance that's tailored to your own circumstances.
Now, there are a few more things on this checklist that I think we should dig into.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are some really interesting points here that I think we should talk about. One that jumps out at me is the scenario where, maybe you're facing a lawsuit on top of, all this other debt. Bankruptcy could offer some real protection in those situations.
Right, because a lawsuit could lead to wage garnishment or even having like your assets seized,
Right.
which would just add more pressure to a situation that's already tough.
Absolutely.
So bankruptcy could kind of act like a shield and give you a little bit of breathing room to get back on track.
Right. Exactly. It's all about finding ways to regain control of your finances.
Mm,
Another thing on the checklist that I think is worth talking about is owing income taxes that you just can't pay right now.
yeah,
This is another area where bankruptcy could potentially offer a solution.
because certain types of tax debt can actually be discharged in bankruptcy, right?
That's right. Not all tax debts are going to qualify, but a qualified attorney can help you determine if bankruptcy could provide some relief in your particular situation.
Okay. I see another one here that a lot of people probably relate to. Having a car that's worth a lot less than what you still owe on the loan.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a situation that can get out of control fast,
it can.
especially with new cars losing value so quickly.
Yeah, it's often called being underwater on a loan,
Right.
and it can be a real burden financially. Bankruptcy offers a couple of different options. You can surrender the car and discharge that remaining debt, or you could reaffirm the debt and keep the car, but maybe under revised terms.
So it's all about finding the best strategy for your situation.
Exactly.
And then, I mean, there's the big one. Having very little to no savings, like no financial cushion at all. That's a scary situation to be in.
Yeah, and sadly, it's the reality for a lot of people, especially when the economy is uncertain.
Yeah.
It's definitely a vulnerable position to be in. Without any savings, any unexpected expenses, even small ones, can quickly turn into a financial crisis.
Oh, yeah.
So bankruptcy can provide that much needed fresh start by, wiping out debt and allowing you to actually rebuild your financial foundation. It's about creating a pathway towards some stability.
So Geraci Law's checklist really emphasizes that, if 3 or more of these factors apply to you, it's definitely a good idea to talk to a bankruptcy attorney.
Yeah.
And if 5 or more apply, they actually say you should have called 3 months ago.
Yeah, it really underscores the importance of seeking professional guidance early on, when you're facing some serious financial challenges, because delaying action can often make things worse. Debt can accumulate really quickly.
We've been talking about like the common causes of bankruptcy and when it might be a strategic move, but we haven't really touched on the emotional aspect. I mean, I imagine going through this can be pretty stressful.
It can be, absolutely. There's often a sense of shame or failure that people associate with it.
Uh-huh.
But it's important to remember that bankruptcy is a legal process. It's not a personal judgment.
Right.
It's about acknowledging a difficult situation and then seeking a solution for it. And having resources like the ones provided by Geraci Law can really make the whole process feel a little bit less daunting.
They also highlight that many people actually see their credit score improve after bankruptcy because their debt-to-income ratio looks much better. So it's like this chance for a fresh start.
Exactly. It can be a turning point, allowing you to rebuild your credit and work towards, achieving some long-term financial stability.
We got to remind our listeners again, we're not providing any legal advice. This is just for informational purposes only.
Right.
If you are considering bankruptcy, you absolutely need to consult with a qualified attorney.
I agree. Every case is different, and any legal advice should be tailored to your own specific circumstances. And listening to this shouldn't be considered forming an attorney-client relationship with Geraci Law.
Past results don't guarantee similar outcomes either.
Right, exactly.
We've covered kind of like the when and the why of bankruptcy, but what about the how?
Yeah.
Like, what should someone expect if they do decide to move forward? Geraci's book talks about 2 main types of bankruptcy, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13.
Right.
What are the key differences there?
So that's a great question. We touched on Chapter 7 a little bit earlier. It's It's often called liquidation bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And it's typically for people with limited income and assets. So in a Chapter 7 case, a trustee is appointed to sell any non-exempt assets to pay off creditors. And most unsecured debts, like credit cards and medical bills, are usually discharged, which means you're no longer obligated to pay them.
So it's a pretty quick process focused on wiping out those debts and giving you that clean slate.
Exactly. Chapter 13, on the other hand, is often referred to as reorganization bankruptcy. And it's typically a better fit for people that have a steady income and want to keep their assets, like maybe a house or a car, but they need help managing their debt.
So instead of selling off assets with Chapter 13, you create a repayment plan.
Exactly. You work with your attorney to develop a plan to repay a portion or maybe even all of your debt, but over a period of like 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And that plan is submitted to the court for approval.
I see.
And once it's approved, you make regular payments to the trustee, who then distributes those funds to your creditors.
So it sounds a lot more structured, but it lets you keep your assets while getting your debt under control.
Exactly. And while Chapter 13 might take a little bit longer than Chapter 7, it can be a more suitable choice for people who, want to retain certain assets or they have debts that just can't be discharged under Chapter 7.
Choosing between Chapter 7 and 13 really does depend on your situation and your goals.
Absolutely.
And again, you really need a qualified attorney to help you figure out the best path.
Absolutely. Navigating bankruptcy law, you really need an expert. And having a lawyer by your side can be so valuable throughout the whole process.
Let's shift gears for a sec and talk more about the free debtor education course that Geraci Law offers. We mentioned it briefly before, but I think it deserves more attention.
Yeah.
You send over some information about it, and it just seems like such a valuable resource.
It is.
Even if you don't end up choosing bankruptcy.
I totally agree. It's really a fantastic initiative that shows their dedication to empowering people with financial knowledge.
Yeah, and it's available online at infotapes.com.
That's right.
And it covers a wide range of personal finance topics.
Yeah, it covers things like budgeting, understanding credit, managing debt, making sound financial decisions. It's really designed to be accessible, it's informative, and it equips people with really practical skills that anyone can benefit from.
So it's like a financial literacy toolkit, kind of.
Exactly.
That helps you get back in control of your money no matter what your situation is.
Exactly. And what I really appreciate is that it emphasizes that proactive financial management.
Yeah.
Even if bankruptcy isn't on the table.
Yeah, it's about prevention as much as finding solutions.
Right.
Like learning how to budget effectively, keep track of your spending, make good choices about credit. All of that can help prevent those problems in the first place.
Absolutely. And for those considering bankruptcy, the course can offer valuable context and really help them understand what to expect.
Right. So you can approach the whole process with more confidence and understanding. Now, let's circle back to something we talked about earlier. Those societal factors that we were talking about that contribute to this financial distress.
Right.
Geraci mentions things like stagnant wages, rising healthcare costs, all these unexpected life events.
Yeah.
I mean, those are issues that can impact anybody, no matter how financially savvy you are or what choices you make.
Right. It's a really important point. We often view bankruptcy through an individualistic lens, like blaming it on personal irresponsibility or poor choices,
Right.
But the reality is much more nuanced than that. These systemic factors create an environment where financial vulnerability is actually quite widespread.
Exactly. So when we talk about bankruptcy, we really have to remember that it's not always a simple case of mismanagement.
Right.
Or even poor choices.
Right.
Often it's the result of these larger forces at play.
I completely agree. And it raises some really important questions about things like the accessibility of financial safety nets and even the role of social support systems in preventing this widespread financial distress.
Yeah, it really makes you think, should achieving the American dream really involve navigating this minefield of financial pitfalls?
Right.
Like maybe a system that actually offers more support, during those tough times is something we should all be working towards.
It's a really thought-provoking idea. It challenges us to kind of shift the conversation, away from blaming individuals and towards a sense of collective responsibility. How can we create a more equitable and supportive financial landscape that that really works for everybody.
So as we wrap up our look at bankruptcy here, let's just kind of recap what we've learned. I
Oh,
mean, we explored those common causes,
Hmm.
and a lot of them, like we said, stem from issues within the larger system, not just, personal mistakes.
Hmm.
We talked about when filing might be a strategic move, especially to protect those assets like, retirement savings
right.
or when you're facing a big drop in income.
Yeah.
And we talked about how important it is to get guidance from qualified attorneys, like those at Geraci Law, who offer free consultations.
Right.
And even valuable resources like their debtor education course at infotapes.com.
It's all about empowering yourself with knowledge so you can understand your options and make those choices that are right for you and your long-term goals.
Right. And bankruptcy can be complex. It can be emotionally challenging, but it can also be a pathway to a fresh start and a more stable future.
Absolutely.
And as we always say, this is just for informational purposes. We're not offering legal advice.
Right.
If you are facing financial challenges, talking to a qualified attorney about your own specific situation is always the best thing to do.
Remember, past results don't guarantee similar outcomes. And listening to this shouldn't be considered forming an attorney-client relationship with Geraci Law.
Right. And it's important to remember you're not alone. There are resources out there.
Right.
Seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this look at bankruptcy. We hope you found it informative and maybe even empowering.
We hope so.
Knowledge is power, and taking control of your financial future is a journey worth taking.